Well, well, well.
Hey, how you doing?
Trey Kay.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I've just been working really hard and just a lot of balls in the air. I can't believe you've ever heard that from me before.
Hey, it's Trey, and you're listening to Us and Them from PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. And that's my producer, Christina Stella. And we're talking about some recent interviews and trips I've taken lately to see my good friend Alice Moore. In the middle of July, I drove down to southwestern Tennessee. It's just above the Mississippi border, after getting a long-anticipated phone call. So the reason that I'm driving to Acton, Tennessee right now is that I'm hearing that Alice is that she's in failing health, and her daughters have told me that that she's kind of winding down. And over the years, I've known almost during the whole time that I've been friends with Alice or have known her, I've known that she long ago had a cancer diagnosis, and she's been battling that for a while. But it's pretty much gotten to the point where there's just not much more that they can do. And so I feel compelled to go and see her one more time.
Is that you, Ray? How you doing?
That's Ray Whitehurst, Alice's brother. He greets me at the house. But on this visit, I choose not to record much else. That's because Alice isn't doing well. But in a way, she's the same old Alice, asking me if I'm hungry, if my family's doing well, introducing me to her family. We have a very unlikely friendship. Decades ago, Alice Moore made headlines in West Virginia and across the nation, actually. And depending who you ask, she's either a hero and crusader for the well-being of children, or she's a dangerous, religious, meddlesome busybody. Alice played a key role in a violent, tumultuous conflict over textbooks in my county in West Virginia. Alice wanted a new series of textbooks removed from the school system because they offended her religious and political worldview. The young me would be amazed to find that the grown me, decades later, was making a documentary that featured Alice Moore. That's how I learned Alice was not quite what I thought. Even today, I sometimes am surprised that Alice has been such a great friend and that she's taught me so much about relationships and politics and people. Maybe you know where this story is going, but I don't want to talk about Alice's death. Not yet. First, I want to talk about some of our conversations, like when I first showed up at her house with my family photo album.
You were just saying, what's the first thing you remember when I came here to visit you? It was back in 2009.
Was it 2009? Well, you drove up and you went to my front door,
Yeah.
which nobody ever did, though, because, just folks around here, they'd come to that side door. But you came to the front door, and your hair was longer. It was longer then. And I know the next time you came, you'd cut your hair, and I was kind of disappointed because I thought I liked your hair the way it was. And I liked it otherwise anyway. But you came to the front door, and you brought the album with you, with Templeton's picture and other family members. And I just, I thought how nice that you introduced me to your family. And that impressed me, that really did.
Here's the deal, Alice. The thing that has eventually happened is that you and I have become good friends, and we have a different way of looking at the world, and yet we're good friends. But at first, I wasn't sure if we could be friends, and I thought, I get emotional just saying that. I just wanted to show you that I had a family.
Yeah.
I was telling your son Timothy the other day, and I said, Timothy, did you ever watch To Kill a Mockingbird? You remember how the kids used to go and touch Boo Radley's door and run away?
Yes.
I said, I used to call your mom and make prank phone calls.
You used to do what?
I used to call your house just to could I call Alice and talk to you on the phone? And I remember once, I think I've told you this before, but I remember calling you and I remember kind of shaking, I'm going to call Alice Moore because your number was in the phone book. I could have called you up and I did. And I was expecting to, we used to make prank phone calls. You'd call people up on the phone and I don't know, say.
Oh, yes, I remember. In fact, on the board, we passed a ruling on the board. How was that? That if somebody, one of the kids, really got in a big way of calling people, calling up the school board and kind of doing pranks for things.
Yeah. I feel like making that story about the Kanawha County Textbook controversy, which at the time was just an idea I had, but it's kind of led me on a career.
Was there a moment when you realized that you were friends with Alice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, early on. I remember our first phone call. I remember really enjoying the talk. I mean, at first, when I started working on the documentary, I was nervous that she would say, well, gosh, do we need to talk about that again? Or I don't know if you can tell this, Christina, but I still have what people tell me are traces of my West Virginia accent. But when I go to West Virginia, they don't really feel like I sound like a West Virginian. I was afraid that Alice would think that I was, from the liberal news media and that she wouldn't talk to me. And she in particular would just think that I was not worthy. And all of that proved not to be true. She seemed to be very interested in a conversation. She liked engaging in debate. I don't know for sure, but my recollection is that she and I stayed on the phone for a long time. When I started making the plans to drive all the way from New York to Tennessee to go and meet her, she seemed real excited to meet me, and she cleared a couple of days, and she had food for me. But her mother, who at the time was in her 90s, made me an apple pie.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. As a matter of fact, I ate the whole thing on my way back to New York. Yeah. Yeah.
On the side of the road? Where?
No, I just kept cutting pieces of it and eating it. Well, I mean, it's a long drive back from Tennessee to New York. So. And while we sat on her couch and had this interview, you could smell the dog. I remember smelling the dog, and the dog was at her feet. And I realized at that moment that there was a kind of an intimacy. She'd done other interviews that, where she had to do makeup and put pearls on and wear a nice dress. But this was just her, as she pretty much is in her house all the time. And she had this a look in her eye where you could tell she's listening to your question, and she was taking it in, and she was always very polite. And then she would come back with an answer that I always thought, at least her position felt well thought out. I'm not smart enough to know if her arguments were held water philosophically or whatever and logically and stuff like that. But you could hear that at least she was stating very cogently what it was that she believed. She had a very good memory, at least in those first meetings, of what actually happened on the school board. And when you would go back and you would, fact check things, she was usually right. And if she wasn't right, she was happy to correct herself. At least with the school board stuff, she was trying to stay close to the record of what happened. Okay. I forget what we were talking about.
Me too. I have forgotten it already. I don't know what we were talking about exactly, but
well, I mean, what
you came to my front door. I know the first time you came, and you came to the front door of the house, which nobody ever did because the carport was right there on the side of the house. And let's see, you were very gentlemanly, very nice, but and you were kind of I don't know, you were just kind of a young kid at the time. I'm not very old. How old were you when you showed up?
I was in my 40s at that point.
About what?
I was in my mid-40s.
40s. Well,
which to us now both seems like a
yes,
kid.
Like a long time ago, but more for me, I guess. We kind of got, I think, well acquainted.
One thing I remember, I tell people about this when they ask me about my friendship with you, and I talk about the times that we would get on the phone and talk while I was driving. And then of course, what ends up happening in this day and age is I get to some place where there's not a cell signal and the call drops. And there may be times where the call would drop and I try again and I try again and I try again and I couldn't get back, and it was like, oh, I'll call her tomorrow. And then I'd call you the next day, and this is me imitating your voice. You'd say, oh, Trey, I get so worried when that call drops off. I just think that you're going to end up in a ditch. Or you'd say, I just hope that you're going to end up on the right side of eternity. Yes, you said that.
Well, that sounds like something I would say.
Yeah.
One time years ago, Alice took me to get a slug burger at this place called Lloyd's, which is near her home in Acton, Tennessee. And it's just south over the Mississippi border in the town of Corinth. And slug burgers are common in this part of the world. The patty is made of pork trimmings, ham, and soybean, and it's deep fried and served on a bun with pickles and mustard. And if you take a bag of them home, the sack is so greasy that it's almost see-through. Anyway, I remember Alice and I doing a lot of giggling that day.
Just out of curiosity, how far do you think it would take me to drive to find a liberal around here in Corinth?
Let me think a minute. Probably take you a good long drive. We used to have some, and we still do. We have some Democrats, go to church with us. But Obama sort of changed their voting.
The night before my last interview with Alice, her son Timothy and I picked up some slug burgers just for old time's sake. And we took them back to her house that was once Alice's mother's house. There was a hospital bed in front of the TV with a familiar voice blaring out of it.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much to Charlie. I'm thrilled to be back with the proud young conservative patriots of Turning Point Action and Turning Point USA.
And that's when Alice turned to me and asked a question I hadn't heard in years. If I liked Donald Trump. I wasn't visiting the same Alice from all our years of phone calls. She didn't seem to remember our conversations where I'd expressed deep concern about the former president. But since my mission wasn't about discussion or debating, I did something that I'd never done. I lied to Alice. I told her, I like Trump. And she said, oh, good. Then you can stay there. And in that moment, I thought about one conversation that we'd had about my son.
Well, we got well acquainted when you came by the house and you were telling me about Templeton. You told me, I think at the time, Templeton had did he have a fall or something?
Yeah, he did. He did right around the time that I was first getting to know you. He had a fall and he had a really bad concussion, which meant that he couldn't go to school.
I remember that.
And that's probably either then or maybe not longer, because he was out of school for, I think, 4 months or something like that.
No, it was scary.
Yeah. And I remember you would always ask about him. And then when he got back to school, it was harvest time here in the South, and you went out in the fields and you cut a big cotton planter, part of it, and you mailed it to him so he could see what a cotton ball looked like.
Oh, and the kids, they took it from room to room. It's gone.
What's that?
You may have to speak up, or you could plug this in for me.
Okay, I'll do that. Where do you do that?
I hate to be an invalid, Trey.
Oh, that's okay. So what? Where do I plug these in?
Okay, let's see.
In our typical fashion, Alice and I still have more to talk about. And that's coming up after a break. You're listening to Us and Them. This program is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council and the CRC Foundation.
Music lifts us up and brings us together, even when we can't get together in person. Mountain Stage brings you live performances on the air, online, and in our podcast. They remind you how it feels to be in a live audience listening to live music. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find a link to our stations and our podcast online at mountainstage.org.
What they were doing. Now, you know.
My dear friend,
Oh,
it's so good to see you.
oh, it's good to see you. I'm so glad you could come.
Yeah, I am too.
Bring your Amy next time.
All right.
Give me notice.
I'll give you notice. I'll give you notice. Maybe she'll bring her ukulele and play a song for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Now we can come back up.
Yeah. Amy Fest.
Hey, it's Trey, and you're listening to Us and Them from PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. And today I'm thinking about my friend Alice Moore. In many ways, what we were to each other was simple. She loved me, and I loved her back. But more recently, all I can think of is the past few years of our friendship, when things seemed to get more complicated based on the things that were going on in our country. She and I spent a fair amount of time talking on the telephone, and usually it was when I was driving in my car. And our conversations were not always easy. I would say probably if I have any regrets about my friendship with Alice, the Trump years made it hard to talk. The rhetoric got so heightened everywhere that I felt that I had a short temper. He would do bombastic thing after bombastic thing, and it would be in the news, and I would just be shocked, outraged, disgusted, really angry. And I don't know, I wanted to call Alice and say, are you kidding? You approve of this? And I think maybe I did that a couple times, and it got to the point where I just had a hard time talking to her. And there were times where I think Alice was Sometimes it would be like a little phone call, or sometimes it would be she would send me something in the mail. I knew that she really wished that we could connect. Alice died a few weeks after my last visit on September 9th, 2023, after a long battle with cancer. She was 82 and passed away at home surrounded by people who loved her. So I am back again in Tennessee, traveling on these old country roads. I've been on this route several times in the past. I've got a nice suit on, got a tie, wearing some suspenders, and I look nice and respectable because I'm going to go today and deliver a eulogy at the memorial service for my friend Alice Moore. And as I've been driving along, I've gone back and listened to a lot of the interviews that I did with Alice over the years. I re-listened to the very first Us and Them episode, Trey and Alice. And there's just like little parts of that kind of get me choked up. Part where I asked her, I said, why is a liberal progressive who lives in a blue state like me and a conservative Christian woman who lives in a red area of America, why are we friends? And she says, "'Cause you need me, Trey."
I remember you being angry one time, and I think that's about the time your marriage was breaking up.
Yeah.
And
You said something.
I can't remember what happened, except I know that you were angry and upset, I think. And we kind of, I don't know if we had any crosswords or not, but I just remember that you were upset, and I don't remember. Did you tell me then about you?
Well, what happened is I shouted at you. That was not my best moment. And now the details of our crosswords don't really seem to matter. I mean, the fact is we forgave each other and our friendship endured. But the tensions in America have risen. Sometimes conversations across this divide, even with people we love, well, they're a little panic-inducing and sometimes heartbreaking.
The more you talk about it, the more I'm just thinking, like, do we ever really know when someone's our friend? I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I think about this all the time. How do you also know that same person, any person, right, can be capable of real harm? I don't know what to do with that.
If you've been steeped in the world that Alice was steeped in, it made perfect sense why she believed what she believed. I don't share her view of the Confederacy or icons like the Confederate flag. I think that her memories of things like slavery, I think, are distorted. And I guess that somebody could make a case and say, well, Trey, why would you talk to somebody like that? And we fought. We argued. I mean, I yelled at her.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. At some point, we were talking about Trump, and this is, before he was elected president. I was also really confused as to why somebody like Alice would like him. She said, you don't really get
or understand how urgent this election is. And you don't really understand why somebody like Donald Trump appeals, because you don't have a personal relationship with God.
Oof.
I kind of went ballistic. I had been going through a period of time that summer where I needed everything that I could muster to keep positive, to keep my sanity, to get myself through what felt like a really hard time. I had lost the funding for my Us and Them project, which in many ways had felt like my life's work. And my marriage around that time had disintegrated. And I was eking it by, with the little bit of money that I had. And so I was praying a lot. And this whole idea that she was basically saying like, no, you've got God all wrong or something like that. I was like, no, you don't get to do that. I think that she saw my thinking as broken. And I think that she felt the reason that I didn't believe that was because I had been indoctrinated in a secular, liberal, progressive world, I think through the school system, et cetera. And because of that, I was unable to kind of see what she believed to be the truth. I remember one day we were talking about Christianity because we had spent a lot of time talking about her perspective on people who were gay and lesbian, transgender. I had much to say about how people in her religious cohort, that they were not kind and that they were judgmental. And she said to me, she goes, Trey, you just are, the reason that you are predisposed and that you won't really see the truth is because you just have so much affection for and you care too much about the issues that have to do with gay and lesbian people. And I just remember thinking, is that what you think it is? That's just one example. I hate saying what I'm getting ready to say, which is I felt like I understood Alice, but I wasn't sure that she understood me. I hope this is not our last time of meeting, but I really needed to check in with you and let you know how much I love you and how grateful I am to you.
You are a wonderful friend. You have been a wonderful friend all these years. And so glad that you still come by sometimes when you can. Yeah, I don't know. We ended up good friends along the way.
Well,
But I enjoyed talking to people who might think they were my enemies. I just,
why?
I don't know, because I didn't feel like I had anything. I don't know, because I thought I might help them see some things in a better light occasionally.
Thanks for telling me about your friend.
I've had a lot of friends in my life. And some of them drive me nuts. And Alice was one of them. She drove me nuts. And I'm a little reluctant, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because you asked me how it is that we knew we were friends. But I remember there were times other than when we argued where we were incredibly tender with one another. At times like that, I didn't know what else to do other than just to let her know at the end of the conversation that I loved her. There are people who are still in West Virginia who have a deep dislike for Alice, or maybe they don't dislike her in particular, but they really dislike what she represented. They feel as though this one person who I'm thinking about, and I'm not going to identify him by name, but he kind of accuses me of being biased with regard to Alice, that she kind of had a charm and that I don't understand the harm that she has caused to people in West Virginia and perhaps outside of West Virginia.
What do you say to that, though?
I don't feel that my work as a journalist is to report, in a way that shows that spins a narrative on how destructive or evil that she is or was. I don't think that's my job. I didn't go to journalism school. I've had to kind of learn on the fly from reading and talking to other professionals, like what is and isn't ethical with regard to a journalist. And to have somebody like Alice, where I was not exactly sure what the boundary should be, with regard to when I was at her memorial service, it was hard not to cry. I can't believe I didn't do it already, but it's just as I think about it, is thinking about her and that cotton ball. I mean,
I'm thinking about where the cotton ball is today.
I don't know.
You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this show was me, Trey Kay, Christina Stella, and Kate Smith. Thanks to Kim Green, Hal Humphreys, and Amy Eddings. And special thanks to Chrissy Moore-Hinthorn, Kevin Moore, David Moore, Amy Moore-Tillman, Timothy Moore, and Ray Whitehurst. Michael Lipton, Tristan Lozow, and Ahmed Solomon wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the West Virginia Humanities Council, and the CRC Foundation. Hey, we'd love to get your thoughts about this episode. Would you share them with us on our Facebook page or on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Us Them Podcast? Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the Mentorship Program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.